Welcome all, this is Madan. In this demo, I'm going to show you how we can implement CQRS pattern in ASP.NET Core MVC application using MediatR library. So in order to use MediatR library, we need to install the MediatR package and then mediator.extensions.microsoft.dependency injection. So these are the two packages that we need to get started with MediatR library. After we install these two packages here, we can go to the startup and add MediatR as a service. So we can add services.add MediatR and we need to pass the assembly here. So we have successfully added Mediator service in our startup.cs. That means it is available for dependency injection. So after that, here I have created a repository here called employee repository, and I already have an employee model here. It is very simple model with ID, full name and age properties. And in the repository I have implemented several methods here: create, edit, remove, find by ID and find all. So if you don't know about the repository pattern, then we already discussed about this repository pattern in ASP.NET Core in previous videos, so you can find that out on the playlist if you are interested. And I have defined the methods that we are going to implement in our employee repository. So our employee repository looks like this. So it is simple, straightforward. It creates the employee, edit, find all, and then remove the employee. And then I have a controller here called employee controller, and I have a empty actions here. So I have a empty index action, new, and then edit, update, delete. So we have to write code in our controller by using Mediator. So this is our repository, this is our model, and this is our controller, employee controller. And I have created a MediatR folder here, and MediatR and employee, and inside this I have created a two folder: command, query, and handler. Since we have already talked about CQRS pattern in our previous videos, so if you are interested, then you can look onto that. So in order to implement CQRS using Mediator, we need command, query, and handler. So query, we separate the part of the applications that only queries data from the database, that is read only, and we also separate the part of the application that changes that make changes on the data to the database, which is on the database, so that goes under the command. And handler handles the query and the command. So in our application we will be having new create, update, and delete feature, and this create, update, and delete all changes the state of the data, so they go they go under the command. So and the query, we are going to fetch all employee and single employee, so these are going to fall under the query. And it is not necessary to put them inside the separate folder. We can place them in a single place, but it is easy to maintain this way, so I have separated here. So at first, let's have a look at the get single employee. And the every query should implement I request. So let's remove this here, and let's remove this. So this is a simple class here, C# class. And now in order to make this query using Mediator, we need to implement I request, and we need to pass the T, which is the return type. So the get single employee query returns the single employee, so we'll be passing here a single employee. After that, what we need to get the single employee from our repository, that means we need an ID. So we need to create that ID as a field to the as a property to this class. So I'm going to create a constructor here, and then let's create a one parameter ID here, and with this we can create a property. So this is all. If we have a parameter, then we can create those parameters this way, and we will be using this later on. And in another query, this query also, this is a simple query, get all employee query, and this should also inherit from the I request, and this returns the list of employee, because get all employees returns list of the employee, all employee from the database table. So this is the return type of this query. And in order to get all employee, we don't need any parameters, so we don't need to create any constructor or the properties here. So this is the query part. Now let's look onto the command part. And let's say we have a new employee command here, and all the command in our application also should inherit from the iRequest, same as a query. And the return type, we need to provide the return type here. So if we create the employee, then we may want to return that created employee. So I'm passing here employee. And what we need to create a new employee, that means we need to pass employee as a parameter, because in our controller, in the new action, we have an employee model, and we are passing that employee model to the repository, and that goes into the database. So we need to think about that when creating the new employee command. We need to pass the employee, so we can create a constructor here, constructor, and we need to pass employee here, employee, and let's create a property here and then initialize that, so that when using this command we can pass this employee. And other commands are same. So update command, in update command also it should inherit from the iRequest of employee, and the same thing here, in order to update the employee we need the employee. And delete command, it also inherits from the iRequest employee, and in order to delete the employee we need the employee in entity framework. So this is about command and query. So actually command and query are both same, since they both reference or implement iRequest and the type of and type T. So this is about the command and the query part. Now we have a handler. So let's look on the handler, and for each query and command there must be one handler. So here let's go through the get single employee handler, and the handler should inherit from the implement iRequest handler. So I'm going to remove this and write this code again. So till now this is just a simple class, and in order to make this handler we need to implement iRequest handler, and this handler takes two parameters. One is the query for the get single employee, and another one is the return type of that query. So get single employee handler, this handler we created this get single employee handler for this get single employee query. So we can pass get single employee query here, and this method or this handler should return what, the single employee. So we can pass employee here, employee. Now let's implement the interface, and now we can return the data. Since we need to return the task for this, so what we can do is return task dot run, and we can pass the lambda expression here, and then now we have a, now in this class what we can do is we can access the application DB context, or we can access the repository. So we can create a constructor here, and I'm going to inject iEmployee repository that I created earlier, employee repository, and I'm going to create a field for this. So what we can do is we can do this dot employee repository dot find by ID, and now we can pass the ID, and our ID is available on this request dot ID. So this will find the single employee and returns. Now we have another handler for get all employee query, which is get all employee handler, and this handler also should inherit from the implement iRequest handler, and this is the query that this handler is created for. So this is this handler is for get all employee query, and it returns the list of the employee. In our previous handler the return type was only employee, because this query returns the single employee, but for this we need to pass the list of the employee here, and here we have injected the repository, and the same way we have fetched the data from the repository and returned from this handle method. Now the another handler is let's go to the new employee handler, and in the new employee handler the same thing here, it should implement iRequest handler. And now this new employee handler is created for this new employee command, so we need to pass that command here and the return types. After creating the employee, we are returning that created employee, and this is the repository injection part. So this is same like our previous demos. And now in this handle method we are going to fetch the employee. So this method, so whenever you implement interface first time, it looks like this. And now our create method is asynchronous method in our repository. So what we can do is return employee repository dot create, and this is the task. This returns the task, that means this is the async method. And then we need to pass the employee, and our employee is available on our new employee command. So what we can do is request dot employee, and where this employee is coming from, if we go over and look into the new employee command, then we have passed this new employee on the constructor of this. So and we have whatever comes in the constructor, we are setting this into this private into this property. So this employee is available here on the new employee handler. Now we need to await this and make this async. So this is the handler for the new query. Now if we look onto the handler for the update query, same thing here, it should implement iRequest handler, and this handler is for update employee command, and it returns the employee. So this is the repository injection part, and on this method we use the employee repository, and then we call the edit method and then pass the employee. Now with the same thing here for the delete action also. So as you can look, it is similar to our previous two command handlers. Now in the repository we can also pass the different application context or the different connection here through the constructor in the handler. So if we want to use the separate database for the read and separate database for write operation, then in the get single employee we can inject different database, we can inject different context that points to the different database. And in the new employee, that is for the writing operation, write operation, we can inject different application DB context or the different repository that may point to the different database. So in this way with CQRS we can also use the multiple database, but in our demo we are using the single database here, and using multiple separate database for read and write improves the performance of our application. And our mediator part has done. We have created the command handler and query. Now let's use this mediator from our employee controller, and in order to use the mediator we can inject mediator, and let's create a field for this mediator, and let's bring in the namespace for this. This is possible because we have configured mediator service in our startup.cs. Now in the index action we need to get all the employees, so all employees equals, now we have a mediator and it has a send method, and we need to pass the type of query that we want to send, and what query we want to send to fetch all the record from the database. We will be sending get all employees query, so we will be passing the new instance of the get all employee query. And then finally we will pass this all employees to our view, and since this send returns the task, so we need to await this. So this will bring whole different pieces of the application together and fetch the data from the database by using the query in CQRS pattern. So in case of new, we are returning the single view here, new employee, empty employee here, and when the user fills up the form and send the data to our post method, we need to send that to our command, new command, that is new employee command. And what we can do is we can do mediator mediator dot send, and we are sending the command. So new employee command, new employee command, since the name of our command is new employee command, and we need to pass the model itself, that is the employee that we want to create, to this command. And now we need to await for this, and now this will create the employee. Now in order to edit, first we need to get the data from the database. So variable employee equal to, we have a mediator, let's await this, mediator dot send. Now we need to get the single employee from the database. That means we need to use this get single employee query here. So I'm going to pass instance of the new get single employee query, and we need to pass id to the constructor of this get single employee query here, and we have to pass this employee to the view. Now in order to update, we are getting the updated employee in this model, and same like the new, we should do await mediator dot send, and then now we will be using the update command. So we will pass new update employee command, and we need to pass the model to the constructor of the update employee command. You can confirm this from here. After that, this will update. Now in order to delete, we first need to get the data from the database. So variable employee equal to, let's await mediator dot send. Now we need to get the single employee here, so we need to pass get single employee query, and that expect us to pass the id. So we get the employee single employee here, and then we need to use mediator dot send, and then we need to send the delete command, delete, new delete employee command, and we need to pass the employee, since this expect us to pass the employee on its constructor. So this is our controller part, and we can see that I have only injected, so the only dependency to our constructor is this mediator, and there are no any other dependencies. So this focus on the very loose coupling of the application, the mediator pattern. Now I have already created the views here to save the time. So the views are very straightforward. In the index action, we are passing the list of the employee, and I am creating the table here, and then calling the appropriate action to edit and delete the employee. And the new action is also very simple and straightforward here, simple form that points to the new action and send data using the post. And for the edit also same thing here. Now let's run our application and see if we have successfully implemented the CQRS using the mediator pattern or not. So our controller is employee controller. So these are the employee that I already added. So let's add a new employee 3. Let's click on save, and here we go, we have an employee 3, and we can edit this as well, updated. Let's put 131, and this has updated successfully. And if I want to delete this, then delete. So it's all working. So in this way we can use MediatR in our ASP.NET Core application, and we can use CQRS pattern, but this CQRS pattern should not be implemented for most of the cases, and because it forces us to add a lot of extra layers in our applications, and that makes our application quite complex. So this can be, so in order to use the CQRS and mediator pattern, we should choose the application very wisely, and only few applications can benefit from this type of architecture, but not all. So this is it for now, friend, and if you like this video, then please don't forget to subscribe and share, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.